There are a ton of different seed starting methods, and it can range from homemade DIY items such as the snail roll, all the way to really sophisticated mechanisms like soil blocking, or just your basic, regular, old plastic containers. And you're probably wondering, which one is the best? Where am I going to see the most success? Which one is most economically it makes sense to you and what you're doing? Because let's face it, I think a lot of our seed starting choices are completely based off of internet trends for that year. And therefore, when we go all in on something like a soil blocker that costs an arm and a leg, only for it not to work, there can be some frustration there. So today we are going to rate all of the possible seed starting methods you could think of, and we're going to go from worst to best. Now, the suggestions I'm going to give you are based in plant biology and plant physiology. What's going to support those two things the most, not on vibes and aesthetics and pretty feels. So as we get farther up, you're going to notice it's less aesthetic, if you will, less Instagram worthy, less rah-rah. It's not as special, to say the least. So let's get into it. If you don't know who I am, hi, hello, my name's Ashley. I have a bachelor's of science in soil science. I like to take said science and apply it to all things plants. I've been gardening since about 5 years old, so I've kind of seen everything possible. And my grandma and my mom were notorious for doing what came up on the Martha Stewart channel or what Oprah showed on her show, what was in Home Living magazine, that sort of thing. So my family's big on trends, and I've seen pretty much every possible version of seed starting throughout the years. I remember folding paper pots young. So I've seen it all, and I've seen all sorts of success rates and failures from them. So when we look at seed starting containers from a biology and a plant physiology perspective, there are kind of 5 main things we want to look at and whether or not they support or take away from these things. So number 1 is actually root development. So when it comes to root development, there are a couple things we want to look at. For example, volume. How much volume of root we can get inside of our containers. This could be width-wise or just along with root length. So the physical length of the root. If we're talking about things like tomatoes or transplanting trees, the actual length of the root or the root cell, root trainers, for example, are best suited for something like that. Whereas if we're looking for something like an ornamental grass or a lettuce, you're concerned more about the root ball and the volume, and as a whole, not so much the length. So we actually want something that's a little bit wider. Next up is actually oxygen availability. So this is the amount of oxygen that can penetrate the container or the seed starting thing that you have. So when we look at the containers, for example, like a plastic container, you oftentimes will hear me say that the container is a part of your soil system. And that is because it is what determines how much oxygen is going in and out of the plant root system as a whole. So plastic containers have the ability to allow oxygen through the bottom, and they have the ability to allow oxygen through the top. Clay pots or terracotta pots or peat pots or Jiffys or air training pots, all these sort of things, they allow for air to come in from the top, the bottom, and the sides. So there's more oxygen availability. And this can make a big difference on all each of the roots, but the amount of microbe activity that takes place. Next up is moisture control. So our ability to control the moisture quickly and efficiently. So if we overwater, how long is that going to take to evapotranspire, which very simply put is the loss of water from the system as a whole. So from the plant and the soil itself. Or maybe you're really dry, you underwater, you're notorious for that. You're looking for something that maybe conserves more moisture rather than lets it just run away. Next up is nutrient access. This, oddly enough, has to do with the volume of soil, usually speaking, not so much the container itself. So that is the size of the container that's important. And lastly is transplant shock. So how difficult is it for you to get that plant into the ground? Are we having to tip and then crunch? Or are we able to actually just simply take the entire container and put it into the ground and it will just naturally decompose on its own? These are things that can be not important to some plants and really important to others. So for example, a lot of flowers, tomatoes, peppers, that sort of thing, you can do a lot of damage to those roots, and that plant can be completely fine. But some plants, such as like cucumbers and squash, melons, these sort of things, they're very sensitive root systems. So if we fondle our roots too much, we end up with a big issue, a very sick, transplant shocked plant. And therefore, we wouldn't want to be tipping and crunching in any capacity for those guys. So the number one absolute worst option is egg cartons. So these are free, which is why they're popular. They're very Pinterest worthy photo wise. And of course, it's eco friendly. You're reusing things. So these guys, unfortunately, the cell itself is too small. So what ends up happening is our seedling tends to hit bottom very quickly. And this in turn causes a lot of stress on the plant long before it can actually develop leaves and root biomass to be able to take on stress. So you end up with a plant that tends to be a little bit stunted, not necessarily dead entirely, but definitely stunted compared to some of these other methods that we will see that are also reusable, eco-friendly, and free. So it's not that I'm just saying that's because I want you to spend money. It's because it's truly a useless option. More useless would actually be like the whole eggshell method. That one's just stupid. Do not do that. So it's with a heavy heart that I actually put this one at number 9, but I'm putting it at number 9 for a reason that doesn't have so much to do with, you'll understand when I'm done. The snail roll, the paper towel roll, very famous method. It goes in and out of the conscious mind of the hive brain that is humanity. So it trended, I think, like 2-3 years ago, and now it's kind of trending again, I think. I don't spend a ton of time on social media, so I'm not entirely sure. But a lot of people are DMing me about it. So I feel like it's probably escalating again. So here's the thing. The snail roll looks cool. It looks scientific. It looks funky. And rightfully so. It results in very quick germination. So if you've got stubborn germinators, it is the way to go. And it saves a ton of space. You can grow a lot of seeds in a very small space. The reason why it makes it number 9 is because I don't think it's beginner friendly necessarily. If you are more of an expert gardener, or you're able to read plants' stress signs easily, I think it's definitely probably farther up on the list. But for beginners, I'm going to put it a little bit lower. Now, the benefits are the reason why from a plant physiology perspective, in my brain, it ends up higher up is because it allows for really long initial root elongation, which is really important for things like tomatoes and peppers. It's kind of useless for other plants that don't necessarily have that big, long taproot, have rather a fibrous root system. But for those taproot guys, it's a good thing to have. The problem is that there's not a lot of soil there. So there's not a lot of nutrients, there's not a lot of moisture, and then there's also not a lot of room for light and for space when things do finally germinate. So we actually need to transplant out of that relatively quickly. And if you can't kind of read the cutoff time as a gardener as to when to do that, you can cause a little bit of stress and ultimately have some sick plants. Or, best case scenario, you let it go a little bit too long, you got really tangled roots, and now you're ripping roots on a plant that doesn't have much to begin with because it's still a baby plant. So snail roll, unfortunately, makes number 9. Again, heavy heart. I do like that method if you know what you're doing, but I would not invest in doing your entire garden that way. That would be a poor choice. Next up, we have peat pots or fiber pots or newspaper pots, anything in that category. So these guys, they make number 8. And the reason for that is because I find they fall apart really easily if you're seed starting into them. They end up deteriorating relatively fast, or not necessarily deteriorating. They just become structurally not sound. If you're known to underwater, they tend to wick moisture away from the soil. So you actually need to water more in this case because the pot itself is a part of that soil system. And because it's able to hold on to so much water, unfortunately, you have to ensure that the pot's always wet so that you can ensure the soil inside is always good to go. The oxygen exchange here is very high for obvious reasons. It's very porous, and they're known, or they're cited as being valuable because we can actually take the plant, immediately place it into the ground, and then just put the soil over top of it, and it's going to decompose. Now, this works in warmer climates. In cooler climates, however, this stuff doesn't decompose in the same capacity at all. I've got coir fiber pots from years back still sitting in my garden because it just doesn't decompose. Our soil doesn't get warm enough for long enough for these things to deteriorate quickly. So they end up hanging around for a while. They also will allow for roots to kind of spiral inside of the pot rather than breaking through the pot into the ground. So if you're not going to rip off the bottom, that can also lead to some issues because it just kind of keeps on threading itself through that pot rather than going down and outward. Now, where I find these valuable and where they kind of just shoot right up to number one is if we're talking about squash, cucumbers, melons, loofahs, anything that is really sensitive root systems that don't want to be mucked with, but you want to start separately from being outdoors. This is a great idea. These are great ones to go with. But again, just keep in mind that root could spiral. So if you can rip off the bottom of it, that's ideal. And don't expect it to decompose in a cold soil because it's just not going to. It's going to be there next year, guaranteed. Number 7 is the Jiffy pellets or the compressed pellets. So you guys have all seen these. There's different versions. There's ones with a nylon netting on the outside. And then there's actually ones with like a cotton netting on the outside. So the cotton netting ones decompose and they are a little bit more structurally sound, I find, compared to the nylon netting ones. The nylon netting ones, you will find nylon netting in your garden for decades to come if you choose to use them. So just keep that in mind. If you don't actually remove the nylon netting when you go to bump up, it's going to be your new friend. Now, here's the thing. It's incredibly convenient to use. The only kind of issue with this is that if you don't fully soak them in kind of like a warm water for 24 hours prior to putting the seeds in, there are potentials for hydrophobic spots inside of there where no water can get to, and therefore it results in kind of like a stunted seed, if you will. You also want to ensure we're bumping these up quickly because of that netting. We want to actually tear that netting away and bump up just ideally the soil portion into a container. And therefore, if the roots end up going through that netting, you're ripping a lot of roots, if you will. So that's kind of the only downfall of these guys. I do use them. I do enjoy them, but they are kind of in that mid-range as to whether or not they're wonderful. They're not wonderful, but they're very convenient. They also are very low in nutrients. I should probably note that as well. They are pure peat or pure coir. They don't have any nutrient in it, which is perfect for seed starting. But it's not good for a juvenile plant. So again, that's why we had to bump up quickly when we're utilizing these guys, similar to like a snail roll. There's not a lot of gas in the tank when it comes to nutrients wise. Next one is actually solo cups and DIY containers, like yogurt containers, for example. So these are great when we're looking at a perspective of root volume. So if we're talking peppers and tomatoes, that sort of thing, perfect size. It is ideal. The only downfall to these is that they obviously, you got to crunch to get them out. So I wouldn't use them with root sensitive plants. And then also there isn't a lot of air exchange because you are kind of in a plastic cup. Then obviously you do need to drill the holes into the bottom of it. But otherwise, I think they're fantastic. They're food safe, so therefore they're safe to use with plants. They have a really nice big volume to them, and they're a heck of a lot cheaper than containers you can buy at the store. Okay, so now we're going to get into kind of my top 4. These are my absolute favorites. Number 1 is going to be a root trainer pot or a deep cell pot. This has the volume, this has the size, this has everything you need to achieve really healthy roots that can be placed in there for long term. So tomatoes, peppers, trees, perennials, all these sorts of things do best in a cell like this. Your classic trays, let's face it, they're easy to water with, they're easy to fertilize with, they are compact and you can fit 72 plants in a small space. They work well with a bottom heat source, a heat mat of some sort. They allow you, pretty much everything is built for them. So your trays, your humidity domes, your lights, your stands, all this are designed to be able to take these guys on. So of course that obviously factors into the convenience. They're obviously boring though. The only kind of downfall here is obviously there's limited root volume. There's limited nutrients because of the limited root volume. And there is that risk of circling because of the cells being so much smaller. Number 2 is going to be soil blocking. So here's the thing. I don't use soil blocking very often. I have soil blockers, but I'm heavily irritated by them. That's just my personal preference. Why am I irritated by them? I have no good reason other than I just don't like it. If you like it, stick with it. It's perfect. It has varying different levels of soil volume you could go with because you can get big soil blockers, you can get itsy bitsy soil blockers. It also has obviously very good oxygen exchange. because there's nothing to block oxygen from moving in and out. There's no circling. There's natural root air pruning, which allows for a bigger root volume and ultimately a denser root system, and very successful transplanting, whether you have sensitive root plants or not. I think the only kind of downfall here is the soil texture has to be perfect in order for the soil block to do what it needs to do. I think people underestimate just how compact it needs to be successful in this. And then also things dry out quickly because of the sheer volume of air exchange that takes place. Obviously a downfall. And then the number one seed starting method out there is going to be, hands down, sowing directly into the environment that the seed is going to live its rest of its life in. Containers, in ground, that sort of thing. We want to start the seeds right where we want them. Now, obviously, this isn't always possible, but for things like cucumbers, it is. And therefore, I encourage that because we're not fiddling with transplanting or anything like that. It's just right away off the hop, ideal. So there you guys have it. These are your 10 seed starting methods, 1 to 10, or worst to best. And I will talk to you guys next time.